Hey everyone. Tonight we're drifting back to a quieter, colder time. A time of flickering candles, damp stone floors, and deeply suspicious neighbors. So settle in, lower the lights, let your shoulders relax. And if you fall asleep somewhere around the third unjust accusation, that's perfectly fine. Because tonight, we're talking about what actually happened to women accused of witchcraft after the trials ended. Not the dramatic courtroom moments, not the shouting judges or the ominous confessions, but the aftermath, the long, awkward, deeply uncomfortable what now that followed. And as you might expect, it was rarely pleasant. Naturally, they made it worse. In popular imagination, witch trials end in one of two neat ways. Either the accused woman is executed in a suitably grim fashion, or she's declared innocent and skips back into village life, perhaps a little shaken, but otherwise fine. History, however, prefers messier endings. History always prefers mess. For many women, the trial itself was only the beginning. Even those who survived, those who were acquitted, pardoned, or released, found that life afterward had shifted in subtle, permanent ways, like a floorboard that creaks forever once you stepped on it wrong. Let's start with the lucky ones, and we use the word lucky very generously here. In some regions, particularly parts of Germany, France, and the Holy Roman Empire, acquittal was technically possible. It did happen. Sometimes the evidence was insufficient. Sometimes the accusers contradicted themselves. Sometimes the judge was having an unusually merciful week. But acquittal did not mean innocence in the eyes of the community. It meant something closer to not provably evil at this exact moment, which is not a comforting distinction. A woman released after a witch trial often returned home to find her social life had quietly evaporated. Neighbors avoided her door. Children were pulled inside when she passed. Milk spoiled more often in her vicinity. Naturally, this was her fault. Marriage prospects, if they had existed at all, vanished completely. Widows, already the most common targets of witch accusations, remained widows. Unmarried women stayed unmarried, and married women found their husbands suddenly distant, awkward, or aggressively pious, because nothing strains a relationship quite like the lingering possibility that your wife might consort with demons. Many acquitted women were forced to swear oaths of good behavior. These oaths were vague, ominous documents promising that they would not practice witchcraft, summon spirits, or cause unexplained misfortune, which is difficult because misfortune has a way of happening regardless of one's hobbies. Break the oath, or even appear to break it, and the process began again. Second accusations were faster. Third ones were practically a formality. Some women were released on the condition that they leave town permanently. This was exile without the courtesy of calling it exile. They were told to go somewhere else, anywhere else, preferably quietly. So these women wandered. They moved to distant villages where no one knew their names, yet. They changed details about their past. They avoided standing out. They learned to keep their heads down and their opinions quieter than ever. And still, many were accused again, because patterns follow people, and reputations move faster than wagons. Then there were the women who were never formally acquitted or convicted, those whose trials simply ended. Records stop, judges moved on, paperwork was lost, funding ran out. These women might sit in prison for months or years without resolution. Local jails were not designed for comfort or longevity. They were cold, they were crowded, they were damp in ways that never fully dried. Eventually, some were released simply because they were no longer useful, too sick to interrogate, too frail to stand trial, too inconvenient to keep feeding. Released women emerged thin, weak, and profoundly changed. Many could no longer work. Hands damaged by shackles, bodies broken by malnutrition, minds exhausted by constant fear, which of course only made them more suspicious. Let's drift gently over to another category, the women who confessed. Confessions were the currency of witch trials. They were obtained under pressure, under torture, or under the promise that cooperation might mean mercy. It rarely did, but some women did survive after confessing. Their punishment varied wildly by region and judge. Execution was common, but not universal. Some were sentenced to imprisonment, others to public penance. Public penance was designed to humiliate slowly. The woman might be paraded through town, barefoot, wearing penitential clothing. She might be required to stand in church for hours while sermons were delivered about sin, weakness, and the dangers of women left unsupervised. Because of course, that was the lesson. Afterward, these women returned to lives permanently marked by confession. They had admitted on record to witchcraft, even if everyone knew the confession was coerced, even if the demons named were clearly invented on the spot. Once said aloud, it could not be unsaid. Some women internalized this. They came to believe in a foggy, exhausted way that perhaps they had done something wrong.
that maybe their anger, their grief, their independence had invited punishment. Others did not internalize it at all. They lived with quiet fury, which they learned very carefully never to express. Then there were the children. Witch trials did not stop at adults. Children of accused women were often interrogated themselves, encouraged to testify, taught, gently or not, that their survival depended on cooperation. Children who testified against their mothers often lived with that knowledge for the rest of their lives. Children who did not testify were sometimes punished anyway, orphaned when their mothers were executed, taken in by relatives who resented the burden, placed into service young, where they worked hard and spoke little. A family touched by witchcraft accusation did not recover quickly. Sometimes it never recovered at all. Now let's talk about money, because there is always money. Trials were expensive. Imprisonment cost money. Execution cost money. And in many regions, the accused or their families were required to pay for all of it. If a woman was acquitted, she might still be billed for her own incarceration, for her own food, for the guards, for the ropes, for the candles used during her interrogation. Failure to pay could result in renewed imprisonment, which meant poverty became permanent. Homes were sold, land was lost, belongings were confiscated. Even survival came with a price tag. In some areas, women released after trials became dependent on charity. Ironically, this dependence made them vulnerable to future accusations. Poor women were already suspect. Poor women who had once been accused were nearly irresistible targets. Let's pause here for a slow breath, because this is heavy, but we're keeping it gentle. It's important to remember that witch trials did not exist in a vacuum. They thrived in times of stress, crop failures, disease, war, economic instability. Communities under pressure looked for explanations, and women, especially older women, outspoken women, solitary women, were conveniently available explanations. After the trials ended, those pressures did not disappear, so the same conditions that led to accusations remained firmly in place. In some rare cases, women accused of witchcraft later became something like local legends. Their stories softened over time, edges blurred, details faded. A woman once feared became a cautionary tale, then a curiosity, then a footnote. But during their lifetimes, the consequences were constant. Every illness, every argument, every misfortune nearby carried a familiar glance in their direction. Now quietly, let's acknowledge something else. Not all women accused of witchcraft were ordinary villagers. Some were midwives, healers, women with knowledge of herbs and bodies, women who had learned through experience rather than books written by men who had never delivered a child. After surviving accusations, these women often abandoned their practices entirely. Healing became too dangerous. Helping could be misinterpreted. Knowledge itself was risky. Communities lost skills this way, slowly, quietly, with no formal announcement, which is one of history's favorite tricks. And then there were the women who survived by disappearing. They changed names, they moved far enough away that dialects shifted. They reinvented themselves as servants, laborers, anonymous figures in new places. Records lose them, which is why we know so little about what happened next. Silence, in this case, is not peace, it's erasure. As the witch trials gradually faded in intensity, burning themselves out through excess, skepticism, or sheer exhaustion, no formal apologies were issued, no compensation was paid, no collective acknowledgement occurred. History simply moved on. The women who survived carried the memory alone, in their bodies, in their habits, in the way they watched rooms before speaking, and the way they learned not to stand out ever again. So when we ask what happened to women accused of witchcraft after the trials ended, the answer is not dramatic. It's slow, it's quiet, it's inconvenient. They lived, they struggled, they were remembered incorrectly or not at all. And that, perhaps, is the most historically accurate ending of all. So take a breath, let your thoughts soften. We'll drift soon to another strange corner of history, another royal miscalculation, another inherited problem no